Boycott Chinese products. This is that particular message that we are always being hammered home with. And currently, with the Indo-China conflicts at an all-time high and the idea of Aatmanirbhar Bharat getting the pace, the idea seems to become a reality. Recently, Micromax has been in the news, and it's come in the news for the fact that it's trying to strike back in the Indian market. Today, I have with me Tushar here, who will help us to understand the entire scenario in a better way. Hi, Tushar.
Hey, Anushka.
So, while we've always been talking about boycotting Chinese products, by boycotting Chinese mobile phones, what are the options that we as Indians have?
It's actually a good question. It's also a difficult question. Because see, at one point, when you talk of mobile phone companies apart from Chinese, what are you left with? You're left with Apple, you're left with Samsung. Now, Apple constitutes less than 3 or 4% of the smartphone segment in India. I'm not even talking about the mobile phone market. There are two mobile phone segments. One is your feature phones, the ones which still run 2G and 3G. Then come your smartphones. In smartphone segment, Apple constitutes less than 4% of the share. So until you're urban India, your Apple is a fine option. But what happens when you go to rural India? What happens when you get to middle class families, when you go to low middle class families, rural families? All of them are not that inclined towards the iPhone. Then it calls of Samsung. Samsung has made some progress in the last few months. They've come out with a number of models because they saw this growing anti-China sentiment in India. But that has not been enough. Now, let's talk about an Indian brand. There is no Indian brand out there. People are still buying Vivos, Xiaomi's, the OnePlus. All of them are still selling like hotcakes on these sales which are going on various e-commerce websites. So it's not like it's a very easy going for the anti-China crusaders, right? So that is one problem we still have.
All right. So for all the viewers, I must put out that Micromax has been in the news for two things. First is the production-linked incentive scheme. And second, for the new smartphones that it's now trying to come up with. So now I have my particular opinions on that, but I won't bother the audience with that. But I would ask the expert, what do you have to say on that? What's your take on that, Tushar?
See, we need to understand, Anushka, production-linked incentive scheme. Sure, it was to give some domestic manufacturers some momentum when it comes to production, some incentives. There is an incentive of 4 to 6% on incremental sales after the base year, which is 2019 and 20. But the actual idea of production-linked incentive scheme, what was it really? It was to get production to India. I've done several videos with my co-workers, Karan also, and I think one with you too, where we discussed why Apple coming to India is such a huge deal. But at the end of the day, the production-linked incentive scheme is about getting more mobile phone manufacturers in India. It's not about getting the likes of Micromax or Carbon or Lava to get in a better shape. So we need to understand that. Talking of the production-linked incentive scheme, I have some numbers here. Now, Apple and Samsung, respectively, 37% and 22%. That's how much global revenue they generate. Now, what does the Indian government want? The Indian government wants that these two companies come to India. Of course, they both have been approved under the production-linked incentive scheme. These both companies come to India. They build their high-end products in India. There is a generation of employment. Already we've read the reports that this entire production-linked incentive scheme would generate 200,000 direct jobs and 600,000 indirect jobs related to the mobile phone manufacturing. So at the end, we need to be very clear. The production-linked incentive scheme is more about getting production to India. And also the incentives are for mobile phones, which are more than rupees 15,000 for Apple and Samsung. If I talk about the domestic manufacturers, overall, as per some media reports, under the PLI, we'll see a production of rupees 10,50,000 crore worth of mobile phones over the next 5 years. Now, how much of the domestic production is a share of it? Just rupees 125,000 crore. So it's not like your domestic manufacturers are going to have a very giant leap. They'll have a good start, yes, but it's not going to be a giant leap. So we shouldn't be very far ahead of ourselves when it comes to talking of Micromax taking on China. Of course, Micromax has come out with a series of products. They have accepted their mistakes in public forum, which was a very, very brave thing to do. They're coming up with a new line, new range of smartphones. They're also going to venture into the high-end smartphones, which cost more than rupees 15,000. And they have been saying that the production-linked incentive scheme will help them with competitive pricing. All of that is good, but when it comes to taking on China, when it comes to taking on other companies, Micromax, Carbon, or any other domestic manufacturer, they have a lot of homework to do.
All right, so talking about Micromax as a brand, so this is not the first time that Micromax is emerging in the Indian market. It already exists as a brand, but now it's making a comeback. So do you feel it will be enough for Micromax to come back in the Indian market so that it's able to disrupt or at least challenge the Chinese influence or Chinese dominance in the Indian handset market?
See, this is where I have my doubts, Anushka. Of course, it's a great thing that Micromax is starting somewhere. All Indian companies must take cue. I mean, of course, Reliance also started somewhere when it was about their Jio. Of course, no one can start at the same scale as Jio did, but Micromax is starting somewhere. But let's look at the past few days of e-commerce sales. Xiaomi had smartphones selling out like hot pancakes. The Realmes, the Vivos, the Oppos, all of them are still advertising during the IPL. So all of those things are still going on. To counter the Chinese influence, I'll tell you what happened with Micromax last time. Micromax was building decent smartphones. They weren't great. I won't call them great. I remember owning one of them. They weren't great, but they were functional. They were pretty much functional. The problem where Micromax lost out was they were building 3G phones in an era when 4G was gaining dominance. They never ventured into the 4G manufacturing of smartphones. I'm afraid they might commit the same mistake again, because just yesterday we had the news that Reliance is already planning to make 5G smartphones less than rupees 5,000. Now, can Micromax compete there? I don't mind two local brands competing. That's great for business. But can Micromax compete in the 5G era? The other aspect is it's no longer just about a mobile phone company, Anushka. It's the age of ecosystems. Apple creates an iPhone, it creates an array of products around it. Vivo creates a phone, a normal phone. It creates a smartwatch around it, which is very resembling to Apple Watch. Nevertheless, an array of products is being created around a mobile phone. So this is the age of ecosystems. This is the age of smart wearables. This is the age of very smart devices in your home appliances and things like that. Micromax has promised to do that, but it has a very long way to go before it can create an ecosystem of its own. And this is where the next challenge for Micromax is. Of course, the CEO, he has accepted the mistakes Micromax made last time, but I'm afraid they might make it again, because again, the mobile phone market is transforming very fast, and Micromax will have to do a lot to catch up there.
Having talked about the Indian and Chinese markets and the Chinese dominance in the Indian market, what do you feel, where will Micromax take a stand in, like, say, 5 years from now, and what are the lessons that Micromax can learn from its previous downfall?
See, this is what I just emphasized, that 5 years from now, we'll be talking of 5G, perhaps even 6G. I hope we will be talking of 6G, because we've seen a very big delay on 5G. For Micromax, it's very important to get in the business of smart appliances as well, smart wearables as well. Just mobile phones is not enough. The second aspect, the second lesson they need to take is not just the pricing. It's not only about the pricing that needs to be competitive. Chinese have mastered the art somehow of creating the best smartphones in a very low budget. And even Apple hasn't somehow deciphered that secret. Even Apple still sells very expensive phones. But Chinese can afford to put out very cheap phones with the best of features. Can Micromax do that? Because Indians are not only going to opt for local products for their for where the company belongs to, they're also going to look for the quality. They're also going to look for what the phone really offers in terms of the features and so on. So Micromax really needs to learn its lessons there. And as I said, they just don't need to invest in mobile phones to grow. For the next 5 years, they need to invest in a variety of devices, all of them which can combine to be a Micromax ecosystem. And the same goes for the likes of Carbon and Lava as everyone else. The idea for mobile phone manufacturing companies right now is to go for ecosystem, as even Jio is doing right now. Jio has its own broadband. It has an array of software as a service already launching, and hardware is also following. So even Jio is going for the ecosystem route. And all this, Micromax really needs to start somewhere. It's great. I don't expect Micromax to go big on scale right away, but they need to be very, very certain of how they need to go for the next 5 years, because you don't want a company like Micromax, which people in second and third tier cities actually embraced with great happiness in 2013-14. They started in 2008. You don't want a company like that going down again, and that's my only concern.
Absolutely. With all these messages in place and all these lessons to learn from Micromax downfall, not just for Micromax as a company, but for all the other brands that are now growing in India, and now the people have started to prefer Indian brands over the other foreign brands just for the sake of the idea of self-reliant Bharat. And this is the first time when the idea has gained such a lot of frequency in the minds of people. And the idea of Aatmanirbhar Bharat has also made a level playing field for like every brand, be it a foreign brand or be it a new growing or a startup Indian brand. So thank you, Tushar, for all your insights, and thank you, viewers, for watching this.
Thank you.